I want you to, as you speed up, not to have to think about the downs and ups. And that's some about strumming. And the rest is up to you to perfect it and to get it strong and smooth. It takes a little bit of time. Don't be discouraged. It takes a little bit of time and effort. Main thing, relax, keep that hand going. Now let's learn a little bit about intervals in our next section. Okay, welcome to intervals. We've talked about half steps and whole steps. We've talked about major scales. We've talked about keys and key signatures. Now we're up to intervals. Well, what are intervals? Intervals, what I'm talking about is the distance between two notes. Not notes that are right next to each other, like a half step and a whole step, notes that are beyond that. Like if I'm in the key of C, and I want to know the distance between a C and an E, that would be an interval. A C to an F, a C to a B, all of those would be intervals. Now, there's two different types. There's intervals that are within the major scale, or built off the major scale. These are called diatonic intervals. Diatonic means inside the scale. Now, the two different, we're going to separate those intervals up a little bit. The second, the third, the sixth, and the seventh are all referred to as major intervals. Don't get that confused with major chords. We're talking about intervals, completely different thing. The second, third, sixth, and seventh are major intervals. We just kind of split those intervals up into two groups and call them different things. The intervals that are left are the fourth, the fifth, and the octave, or the eighth. Okay? Those intervals aren't called major intervals. Those intervals are called perfect. I don't know why it's that way. It's just kind of how it is. Major intervals, second, third, sixth, and seventh. Perfect intervals, fourth, fifth, and octave. Okay? Now, so let me ask you a couple of questions a different way. If I said in C, what is the perfect fourth? The answer would be F. The only thing you're listening for is when I say fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth, second. Okay? There's little names that are going to go in front of those that are not important at this point, but are going to get real important later on. But at this point, just realize there's a group of major, and there's a group of perfect. So if I said to you, in F, what is the major sixth? Well, the major sixth in F would be a D. If I'm in B flat and I say, well, what's the major seventh? That would be the seventh step, and in B flat that would be an A. Okay? Now, let's talk about the other group, harmonic intervals. These are intervals that are not within the scale. They're going to take the ones from the scale, but we're going to adjust them a little bit. Okay? So we're going to adjust them up either a half step up or a half step down. Okay? If I call, and again, we got to adjust them into two groups again, the major intervals, if I raise them up a half step, that's called an augmented interval. What is an augmented second? An augmented sixth. Okay? Augmented is also used to describe going a half step up for the perfect intervals. So really, if you're going a half step up on any interval outside of the major scale, it's going to be referred to as augmented, even an augmented fourth or augmented fifth. So if I wanted in C, if I wanted an augmented fifth, let's say, that would be a G sharp. G would be the fifth. Augmented, that G would be the G sharp. Okay? Now, if I want to go down on the major intervals, that's referred to as minor. Okay? Don't get that confused with minor chords, anything like that. In intervals, major, if I want to lower that interval a half step, it's called minor. If I'm in F and I want the minor third in F, I go to the third step, which is an A, but now I'm making it minor. I'm going down a half step. Then it would be an A flat. So the minor third in F would be an A flat. Okay? If I want to go down on a perfect interval, fourth, fifth, or octave, I refer to that as diminished. If I'm in G and I say, well, what's the diminished fifth?